All right, guys, I'm so glad. Thank you. Welcome for Friday night. You are live on Stand Up, Stand Out America with La Conservadora Tejana, Bianca Gracia. Thank you, guys. We're getting here started on our show. We're so glad you are here with us on a Friday night. I have a very special guest with me tonight. If you guys read, I'm going to be interviewing Todd Bensman. I'm sorry. And so if you guys do not know who Todd is, I'm going to tell you he is very well known. He is an author. He's been staying on top of what's going on at our border. He has expertise in some terrorism and homeland. He has been covering the border. He's got a book, America's Covert. It's called Border War. And he's also got another book called Overrun. I'm going to let him talk about it. He's got an impeccable bio. You can definitely go and view it on toddbensman.com, and it'll tell you all about that. You can order his book there as well. I want to bring him on tonight because of the fact of his expertise. He's also been on the Steve Bannon War Room with yours truly every once in a while. I know he's backstage. And Todd is an author of the forthcoming book that I just talked about. And so I'm going to bring him in here, guys, so that we can get going on our interview and we can talk about what's going on at the border from his point of view, as well as trying to get some solutions from his point of view. So welcome, everyone. Welcome, Todd. Good evening, Todd.
How is my audio good? You got
Your
me?
audio is perfect. I can hear you. We can see you. Thank you for joining us tonight on Stand Up, Stand Out America. Todd, it was so important for me to bring you on tonight. As you know, obviously the border situation, the open border situation that we have. I've been calling it out for, over a year. I got, kind of yelled at because I called it an invasion last March. And they're like, you can't say that. And I said, no, I can. But, I just came back from Michigan, and there were some illegals that have been in the country for over 20 years is what they told me. Whether they were or not, you can't verify that. But there was a rally we had, and they decided to come and they wanted to do their protest. I think they were probably hired. I think it was very orchestrated and organized. And, I went to them. I said, what's this? Because they were marching around with their signs, and it said, we demand driver's license now. So I said, okay, let me go and try to find out. Who are you? What are you doing? I see your sign. What's all this about? And so I got into a conversation with them, Todd, and they said, well, we've been here 20 something years. And, and because we can't get a license, we can't get insurance, and it's costing you more money. And they had all this, their own logical reasoning. Right. And I said to them, why do you feel that the United States owes you anything? I mean, you're here illegally. And why do you feel that, I just started asking them questions. And I said, we have an issue right now with an open border. And they all literally sat there and said, we don't have an open border. And I said, I'm sorry, what did you just say? And I said, and I realized people up north don't really know what's going on. So Todd, this was so important. I said, guys, they really do not know what's going on. Either they were playing dumb or they do not know that there is an open. I said, yes, I had to argue with him. Do you want me to show you pictures? Do you want me to show you video? I can show you video. They're like, no, the border's not open. I was like, oh my gosh. So Todd, this is, listen, welcome on our show tonight. I want you to just educate us with your expertise. I'm an advocate. I speak about it, but I'm definitely not like the expert in it. I just know what's going on because I live in Texas and I've gone down to the border. So I do know there's an issue and a problem. And so Todd, tell us, because I know you have, your background is impeccable. You have way more knowledge than I can possibly have. And I want you to educate our audience about what is really going on at the border.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be able to talk to your audience. And I definitely appreciate what you're doing and others like you that I've met along the way who are just patriots who feel strongly about a very important issue and are struggling to get something done about it.
Mhm.
And I know it's frustrating right now for a lot of people because it really is a lot of the power over the issue. The strings lead right to the White House, and mainly in the White House. That's where it resides. So it can be frustrating for activists who are trying to get something done.
Mhm.
Um, we are in, contrary to what your new Michigan fans told you, we are in the midst of the greatest mass migration crisis in American history. This is not just, don't take it from me or anybody else, but the U.S. Customs and Border Protection has a website where they keep track of the monthly apprehensions at the border. And you can see over time on your own, don't take my word for it if you don't want, that the numbers that we're seeing are greater than we've ever seen in the history of the United States.
Mhm.
What we're undergoing right now is on a par in terms of rate with Ellis Island. And what
Mhm.
happened at Ellis Island? That's the transformative degree to which we are undergoing something just monumentally historic
Mhm.
in the United States history. It just is what it is. The numbers have never been like this. And I don't know. You probably go through numbers before. Just stop me if you don't want me to. But
No, I definitely want you to give the numbers. I mean, unless it's somebody gives them to me and I go and they said, "Hey, get these numbers out." But I definitely don't follow the numbers. I'm more of like
well,
action, call to action. So please educate our audience.
Well, they're important because there are a lot of denialists out there, like the people that you just described, that are just like,
Mhm.
well, I believe what Kamala said, the border is under control. And I believe what Alejandro Mayorkas said, the border is under control. And I believe what our president said, the border is under control. But not according to the numbers, which are nonpartisan. And in a single year, the first year, and that this started literally on inauguration day and not one day earlier. It
Mhm.
started literally on that day. They were overwhelmed on inauguration day. The day before inauguration, they were not. The day
Right.
of inauguration, they were overwhelmed. And then it just did this. It went like a SpaceX rocket straight up and has never stopped. We had in the first year of 2021 1.7 million apprehensions at that border. That beat out the last uh, record, which was in 2000. So 20 years earlier, they had a really big surge, brief surge at that time. And then in 2021, they had the biggest ever since they started keeping records in 1960. The Eisenhower administration decided to start keeping records on Border Patrol apprehensions. It's a good idea.
Mhm.
Then in so far in 2022, just the fiscal year through July, uh, we in August we hit 1.8, almost 1.9 million. So so this year broke the record that was the grand record last year, and for a total of about 3.5 million apprehensions. That means that our Border Patrol agents down there have had to process 3.5 million people. Now, just to give you an idea of the scale of that, for the last 6 or 7 years, we've had like about 400,000 for the whole year. 400,000, 400,000, 400, which is a huge number.
Huge.
But I mean, but that's like, I mean, we wish we could have that again, right? So these numbers are, double and triple what Border Patrol normally would have to deal with.
Mhm.
So the workload is crushing, absolutely crushing. And because the workload is so crushing on those agents, they are off the line. They've left the border undefended in huge swaths, or very thinly defended, if at all. And
Right.
so then you have second and third order effects with drug smugglers and with criminal aliens and weapons and cash and trafficking and the kinds of things that would be deterred if we had normal border patrol presence there.
Right.
So when you take it all together, uh, that's not necessarily how many got in. 3.6 million did not actually get in. Because there's Title 42, there is some pushback still happening under the Trump era pandemic related instant expulsion rule.
Mm-hmm.
When Biden entered office, here's what happened. He inherited incredibly low numbers. They were looking at about 800 to 1,500 a day at the handoff.
Right.
Along the border. And then what Biden did is they opened up exemptions in Title 42. They said
Right.
if you're a family with young children, you get a free pass. If you're an unaccompanied minor, we will not leave you in Mexico. Free pass. If
Right.
you're a pregnant woman, 7 months pregnant, free pass for you. Those three groups alone poured through by the hundreds of thousands, just like you and I would have expected. I mean, the day I heard that, I was like, just, you know, do they not realize what's about to happen?
Right.
I was actually in Uvalde one day on my way back to Austin, and I stopped in a diner there to eat and watch the presidential press conference. The president had a press conference, and I heard him say, "We will not leave any unaccompanied minor to starve to death in Mexico. No minors are being. We're not pushing any minors back to there." And I just remember getting on the phone with a border patrol buddy of mine down there and saying, "Watch out, here they come." It's
Mm-hmm.
just so obvious what causes things like this.
Right.
Things that they say followed by action on the ground, which are returned down trail by selfies, cell phones, and chat rooms that tell everybody, oh my God, if you're a pregnant woman, if you're an unaccompanied minor under 18, if you're these demographics, they're giving you a free pass. Run, get in there before they change their minds. And so the result is that those people that they gave a pass to, it's a smaller number than the total apprehensions because of the pushbacks. Just cut me off if I'm boring you here.
No, go ahead. This is very important.
Okay. So we know that about 1.3 million unaccompanied minors and family units, people in family units, were allowed in, paroled in to the country. And then we know that another 1 million are gotaways. So we have had in the last 18 months about 2.4 million, 2.4 to 2.5 million at least. That's an undercount. Who have actually gotten into the country as a result of Joe Biden's policies down there.
His failed policy.
Right. And so between the gotaways, the unaccompanied minors, and these families, that is a gigantic, historic population growth in that span of time. Countries yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me ask a question real quick.
Please.
So
Yeah.
as you realized that this was happening, and that, when with these words and that were being said by this administration, and you said, oh my gosh, here they come, did it dawn on anyone's mind that when they said, oh, we're not going to leave any unaccompanied minors in Mexico to starve, this was a green light for cartel and any other illegal to pick up a kid and say, oh, you belong to me, and bring them in to the country, and they're not really their relative? We did hear a lot of that, and we just see a lot of that. It was being reported by independent journalists. We knew that it was happening, but for some reason, they stopped doing the DNA test. If you remember, there was a process with when Trump was in office that, actually, I know the pastor who whispered that as an idea into Trump's ear to say, we need to do DNA testing, because we knew back then, even when Trump was in office, that they were utilizing kids to get into the country. And so that's what I think people don't realize and understand, is that they think that these are family units, but they aren't. And we've been hearing from Border Patrol agents as well that some of these kids are recycled. They've seen them 4 or 5 times. So Todd, I mean, as you were already sounding the alarm yourself and saying, get ready, this is what's been happening, and it's only gotten worse. And so continue your story, because I wanted to point that out, is that, as you see these increased numbers and you see the unaccompanied minors coming in, doesn't mean that they were all, I mean, if they were alone, they got picked up by an adult and it wasn't even their child. And there's kids that are out there that are either they were left to die. We've been hearing those stories. They're finding corpse, on ranches. And sometimes you can't even find that corpse because the ranches are so big. So you may not even find the remains until when you're out trying to clean up your ranch, or, clean up parts of your ranch, or just doing an inspection on your ranch. So this is very dangerous.
It is. Listen, these policies are killers. I don't want to be alarmist or come off as hyperbolic here, but the administration has blood on its hands, directly on its hands. They
Yes.
are killing people, and they've killed more people with this mass migration crisis and these policies than any other president has killed on the border like this, because most presidents, Democrats alike, Democrats and Republicans, have always been pretty tough on illegal immigration. It's not a campaign winner, even for the Democrats. But something got into an extreme faction of them managed to wrestle control of immigration policy. But what you're saying, I've done a lot of reporting about. I have a tremendous amount of reporting about fake families, and so what you're describing is 100% accurate. We don't know how widespread it is, but there are pretty good ICE intelligence estimates out there that a third of the families that are crossing that border as quote unquote families are fake families, and by that I mean it's not a biological parent or a legal guardian crossing. And here's how it works. I've dug into, there have been a couple of prosecutions actually that have received no press attention whatsoever. I have them in my book. But I've dug deeply into these court cases, and I've interviewed the case agents, the HSI case agents. And here's typically how it works is you have mama down in Honduras. She's got 4 kids. If she were to take those 4 kids to the U.S. border by herself, it'll cost her $20,000 in smuggling fees to get them over. So who's got $20,000? What she'll do is she'll parcel one out to a guy, another one out to another guy, a third one. This is actually a real case. A third one out to a third guy, and she'll keep one for herself. They will pay. The men will pay. They don't have kids, or they do have. Actually, they have families. All 3 of these guys have families, but they're in the United States, or they're having problems at home, or whatever. They're already married with kids, but they grab one of these kids. They pay.
Ron Collins.
Hold on a minute. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
They will pay the smuggler the money,
Right.
and that defrays from the cost of biological mom.
Wow.
So by the time, and they all travel together to the border with the smuggler, and then at the border they split up.
Wow.
But before they go to the border, one of the services that the smugglers provide is they have somebody in the Honduras government that will provide fake birth certificates to all the dads. That's part of the
Wow.
service that they're paying for.
Oh my
So they
gosh.
each have a fake birth certificate that's really stamped. They've got their names and all the rest of that on there. And then they split up at the border and they all cross. And the deal is that later on, we will meet up and I'll collect my children from you. But the problem is that they get delayed at different times for different lengths of time before they can meet up, and the men are off with the kids for 2-3 weeks somewhere in some city, right? It's not their kid. One of them, this
Lord.
particular lady, gave her 6-month-old infant to a stranger, and that guy flew the infant to Florida, and he's living with the infant for like almost a year before she collected the baby.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
that is the most common fake family scam. Women who have multiple children, they defray their own smuggling costs, and then they collect on the other. Well, you sometimes hear these stories about a little baby that's sitting in a cornfield all alone, and it's all this news reporting about it. What that is the guy that rented the kid has no interest in the kid, and I'm not taking this kid with me.
And
I'm
just like
dumping the kid, and somebody will pick the kid up, and he'll be well taken care of by Border Patrol. That's
wow.
what every time you hear about one of those, that's what it is. It's part of that scam. This is under Trump. When Trump had a blip of he had his own migrant crisis,
Right.
mass migrant crisis, and
Oh, the mass migrant caravans that were coming over.
in 2019,
Yes.
family units were crossing in with the kids to take
Mhm.
advantage of a court order called the Flores Settlement. That's this whole other novel.
Right.
But it allowed quick releases into the country for anybody with kids.
Right.
So that's when this started. And they put DNA testing down there. And as soon as they did that, it ended.
Right.
It just tamped that down. They got intelligence from all over Latin America saying, "Oh my God, they're making us wait in line to take a swab, and they're
Yeah.
busting us." And a lot of them in line would just break right in line for the swab and go, "Okay, you got me. I'm not. This isn't my kid." They
Yeah.
would just be breaking left and right in the line. The Biden administration dumped just like you said. There's a little bit of it happening in one or two spots, but by the degree of volume of families crossing, they can't possibly even touch even a tiny, tiny fraction of a percent to see. So they're just letting everybody in. Everybody gets in with these kids.
Right.
And some of these kids are ending up in terrible situations. These are not their parents. These people do not care. They don't want to pay for them. They don't want to feed them, and they're stuck with them. If they go to the police or anything like that, they could get busted for fraud. And so we have just touched the tip of the iceberg of this problem. You're going to
Right.
be hearing for the next 2 years terrible horror stories about this.
So
I
we
mean,
have that. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, but Todd, we have that issue that you're anticipating we're going to hear in the next 2 years that are going to be very, very sad situations with children. We have obviously the crisis because people always tell me, I'm president of Latinos for Trump, but also Latinos for America First, and we have a pack. And people always tell me they're like, "Oh, you're so insensitive," because we're probably the only. I would say this: we're probably the only Hispanic or Latino organization that does not advocate for amnesty or citizenship. We are pretty hard on it. And so, and so they're always telling me, "Oh, you're so insensitive. You're not compassionate." And I said, no, you're not. You're not compassionate and you're insensitive because you would rather use this whole little, oh, poor people messaging and instead of advocating for the women and children who are being raped on the way to get here, and some are getting raped multiple occasions just to get here. So you're dealing with rape victims now, raped children, broken homes, children being left off in this situation, the fake families, all this going on. Now let's pivot. All the fentanyl that's the top thing. I know Jason Jones, you know Jason Jones, I know Jason Jones. He talks about the evolution of the cartel and the fentanyl that's coming into the country. You're now starting to hear families speak out because their child thought it was a Tylenol or a Xanax or something. They thought it was another pill, took it, and it happened to be fentanyl and died. There is a serious crisis with that alone. I call it's an invasion. We have been invaded at the border. I don't care what anybody else says. I call it an invasion. And we're going to see the aftermath of all of these things. And they sit there and in the political scheme of things, sits there and tries to say, oh, but this is the humane thing to do. We can't leave these kids at the border. We can't leave these people at the border. We have to, they're poor. They need work. I am so over that messaging and that propaganda that they've been selling for decades, and no one's talking about what the aftermath, what is actually going to happen in this country and how we're going to deal with it. We can't even deal with the poverty-stricken kids, Americans right now. I mean, I continuously say this. I have a sister who's a school teacher, consistently tells me over the years, this has nothing to do with political parties, but over the years, her heart always goes out to these children who she says, she teaches in very poor districts. And she says, Bianca, she says, it breaks my heart when these kids come to class and they tell me that their parent couldn't afford to pay the electric bill, or they didn't get to pay the water bill, whatever. They're without a service, and it breaks her heart. Or she sees a kid that comes in and is wearing the same clothing 3-4 times a week. And she says, or there's a kid that didn't get to wash their clothes, so they have a, smell. I mean, there's all kinds of situations. And she said, this is happening to our own American kids. Okay. And they're, and we've got this crisis in education here. And then now we're going to take on all the illegal kids and add on. We can't even help our own in our country, and we're trying to extend a hand to other people. That's where I think that, our organization has been very, very vocal on is, we got veterans who are dying every day to suicide. We've got, illnesses. We've got the COVID crisis. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. We can't help people in our own country, and we're still helping other people all over the other countries. At what point, Todd, do we say enough's enough? And I think that even for those that don't know this problem, I have figured out that there's probably 1% of us in the country that are keeping up with what's really going on. The rest of America has no clue what's going on. They do not probably watch the news. And if they get some news, it's going to either be off of their phone because they're skimming through something. And if they watch the local news because they want to know what's going on in their local community, but they're not really paying attention nationally to what's going on. So, Todd, I mean, what are we going to do? This is a mess. It's a disaster. And this is 2 years in, and you just said it. Trump was dealing with mass migration already with those caravans. We have this one that just fully on opened the border, and it's porous all over the place. And so, I mean, you're an expert at this. You've seen what's going on. You're down there. You're reporting. You obviously work with others, experts in this whole arena. What are we going to do in this country, Todd? I mean, how are we really going to address this issue?
Well, for one thing, the first that most Americans have seen of this issue is from the busing from Texas by Governor Abbott, and I guess DeSantis is starting it, and Ducey over in Arizona has done some. Without the busing, it's not that these cities haven't already had hundreds of thousands of people from the border. They all have, but nobody noticed it. But because there's a political touchstone that this is a Republican governor doing this, it's now becoming visible in some of these cities. But I mentioned that there are about 2.5 million new people that have come in from the border and into the country. And those have been absorbed at cities across the country. But that's in an 18-month period. In another 18 months, which will take us to within 6 months of the end of the Biden administration, we should have another 2.5 to 3 million for a total of 6 million. That is not ignorable. That kind of a number is a city the size of Los Angeles, spread all across the country. You will not be able to ignore that. By the end of the Biden administration, another 6 months, there should be as many as 7 million actual new people from the border inside the country. So that's the kind of thing that school districts, any parent that's got a kid in a school district in Indiana or wherever, Boise, they are suddenly going to be having bond elections to pay for the portable classrooms that have to be wheeled up on the back 40, and not enough parents, not enough teachers, tax rates going up. None of them own homes, so they're not contributing to the tax burden on this. ESL language and a decline in education standards in schools that previously were great. That's just the way it is, because these kids, a lot of them quit going to school at age 9 or whatever. They're not even literate in their own countries.
Right.
So
Right.
That, I think, is going to be the very first place in just another couple of years. I think that school districts all over the country are already struggling with this. I Googled the other day, portable classrooms, bond election. And bam, woo, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Go Google those things, and you'll start to get a sense of what's happening out there in the country. I recently spent a week out in Liberty County, Texas, which is it's like northeast of Houston, about 40, 50 miles. It used to be timberland out there. And nothing. It was just like a little town called Splendora, Cleveland, Texas, Dayton, Texas, these little towns, Plum Grove. And I went out there because this massive illegal alien population has moved into the community. At least 75,000 illegals living out in the country, and they have swamped the Cleveland Independent School District. The school district was a tiny school district. I won't go too much into this, but it had, like, 5-6 years ago, 4,000 students. It's got 12,000 now in like 4 years. They're having bond elections. I interviewed the superintendent for 2 hours about all the problems that they can't get ESL teachers. They've got like 17-year-old kids that are at a second grade level. They've got gangbangers selling dope. They've got violence everywhere. 16-year-old ends up in a ditch dead. That type of thing is probably an extreme example, but we will have more extreme examples like Liberty County across the country, and we'll have lesser terrible problems across the country too. And I didn't even talk about uninsured health, people that need health care when they don't have insurance, and they're going to have public welfare benefits, and there's going to be illegal document fraud so that people can work with fake IDs, that they can drive cars, that they can buy cars. There's going to be this whole criminal underworld that just burgeons across the country. And I didn't even talk about the crime. I've studied the crime. Nobody keeps. Just interrupt me if you. I could go on further about.
No, go ahead, because I'm just want you to know that we are live on multiple channels here. We were live all over Facebook. We're live on YouTube, Twitter, Getter, and Patriot TV, live TV. So I will tell you that our Getter family is saying thank you for keeping us updated and educated, because a lot of people don't know these numbers are everything. Facts. We can all, I know myself, I can go and say, we got an invasion or we got to hold people accountable. but numbers, Todd, is what we need. We need those numbers
It
that
matters.
help
I mean,
us because that matters.
the numbers are nonpartisan. The numbers are the numbers. I mean, the biggest numbers in every record is broken.
Right.
There are about 50 national records that are just in tatters on the ground from this particular event. It's unbelievable. The reason I wrote a book about this, it's not quite published yet. I just put that. Where is that? Oh,
Overrun.
the Overrun. I just put it up. It's up for pre-orders right now. I'm not hawking the book to you. Don't think,
Okay.
but
No,
the
this
reason,
is great. Mm-hmm.
but the reason I wrote it is because I recognized right away that this was a real historic event. This is like the moon landing. This is
Mm-hmm.
like the discovery of intercontinental flight.
Mm-hmm.
This is in the immigration setting in immigration, which is a big deal in the United States.
Right.
This is in Ellis Island, and
Yes.
Ellis Island has pages in the history books. Every high school has to teach Ellis Island. It's a big tourist. 2 million tourists a year go there to
Right.
see Ellis Island, and this event right here is knocking it off its pedestal. And people are denying that it's even happening. That's the funny thing. So
Yeah.
I wanted
No.
to write, and I wanted to be the first to write the history book of this thing. It's astounding. And when you go down there, I know you've been down there.
Yes.
I've spent a tremendous amount of time down there when I go down there, I don't stay on our side of the border. I'm on the Mexican side.
Wow.
I don't spend much time at all on the U.S. side. I'm with the immigrants. I've interviewed thousands of them.
Wow.
And all the way down to Panama, coming through the Darien Gap. The other big record that's being broken is the diversity of nationalities that are reaching the southern border.
Yep.
I know you've heard me speak about this.
Mm-hmm.
But
we had during Trump's administration, we had several roundtables with the Border Patrol agents, and they were pretty much telling us even back then that during Trump time, we were already seeing 70% of the people that were crossing were from other countries. What they call them OTIs or something, I think is
OTMs.
OTMs. So they said they're not even coming from Mexico or they're coming from other countries. And so I think it's gotten worse. I've been hearing all these people and different countries that are, some of them that we've never even heard of. And that's I mean, I'm like, how in the world did they get here? They're poor. And then I'm like, you got to travel a very long way. And then you now know, based on, obviously what we've heard and intel that we know, is that you can't even cross the border unless, like you just said, you got to pay a fine to the cartels to be able to cross the border. So
That's
I'm
right.
like, who is paying for these people to cross the border? It just makes no sense. But
no, it does. It does. You have to.
Okay.
You have to talk to them.
Okay.
I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of them all up and down the trail before lawyers get to them. The important thing is when they get to the United States, if you try to talk to them later, they've got this whole persecution story worked out for the judge.
Wow.
They don't have any kind of persecution story like that down trail. And that's the place that you have to get the truth before they get lawyered up, as they say, right?
Right.
And I always ask, where did you get the money? How did you pay for this? How much did you pay? Because, there are people from all over the Middle East coming in, from China, from India.
What do they say?
Well, most of them say that we have family in the United States who have money and they're giving us loans. So the family in the United States are wiring them the money, and that when they get into the United States, they'll have to pay it back, of course. But it's a good.
I mean, Todd, do you really believe that people in the United States are sending them $20,000 to get here?
Totally believe it.
Really?
Yes, I do believe it. But that's just one source. That's not
Right.
the main source. But like,
Right.
most of those, each nationality is a little bit different. The Haitians, for
Mm-hmm.
example, a lot of people think that Haitians are dirt poor and they're coming from a terrible country, but none of the Haitians coming to our border are coming from Haiti. They haven't lived in Haiti in like 5 or 6 years.
I heard
They've
that.
right. They've been living in Chile
Yeah.
and Brazil, and they've been working. They're hard workers. They had residency and work authorization in these countries. They were waiting out Trump. They didn't want to pay the money and then get thrown back under Trump. So they stayed in Chile and they saved their money and waited for the border to open. The
Right.
border, the border opened under Biden, and they were like, "We've got a kitty. We got cash. We're laying it down, and we're going." So they were working. They all have cell phones and computers and savings accounts, and they're just like you and me. They may not be rich, but they're working. They've got money,
Yeah,
and
they're established.
also a lot of the Haitians have family in Florida that have been working already for years, and they wire them money if they need it. They wire them money. There should be prosecutions for that, by the way. Somebody needs to tamp down on that. That's another show. The other thing that happens is a lot of them will borrow the money. They may borrow the money from the cartels, from criminal organizations. I believe that a lot of them borrow money from criminal organizations, the cartels, and then they become indebted to them. If they don't pay, there could be, problems for their family. So once they're in the United States, they're having to make these payments, these remittance payments back. Some of them just, a lot of them say, I'm in my village and everybody. Here's what a lot of people don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
The remittance money that gets sent back is very, very important to villages and towns around Latin America and around the world. So when a young person says, I'm going to try to get over the border in the United States, everybody will pitch in. Whatever they have, they'll pitch in for that person's smuggling fees. Because when they get there to the United States, they'll get paid back with interest. And then the family getting remittance for 20 years. Those people
Right.
get into the United States. And what they do with that money is they build these houses, huge houses, mansions. I was in Guatemala in the Western Highlands a couple of years ago. And, these are supposed to be the places where they're fleeing gang violence and they're just being murdered and tortured and everything else. And I wanted to go see for myself. And they're like, there's none of that around here. We don't have any of that here. This is like a peaceful. People here die in their sleep of old age, man. What they're going for is to build these gigantic houses, and the plan is for them to come back and live in them. So you can see the houses everywhere. I'm right there. I interviewed all the families building them. I'm walking around inside them. Massive, huge, with gold trim window dressings and beautiful ornate carved doors. And if you look across the landscape of Western Highlands, Guatemala, you just see them into the just distance. Everybody's got the houses. That's not persecution for asylum. These people are supposedly planning to come back, but that is worth it for a family to raise the money to get a kid over there by hook or by crook, to get a kid into the United States.
Right. That is, I had, I obviously kept up with what's going on at the border, but I know Oscar Blue covers a lot of that journey as well. But, my first language is English. So I'm, I do know how to communicate in Spanish, but I'd rather hear it in English because then I can hear like all the details. So I'm actually learning a lot from you because I hadn't really heard this perspective. I have always heard obviously what we know at the border. We know that we have our own NGOs that are going into Mexico to help them get here. As you said, they lawyer up. We know the cartel aspect of it, but to have that kind of knowledge and have been able to go further down to find out what's really going on, that's great work, Todd. That is definitely,
That's
I think our audience needed to hear that. We've got comments here saying, keep speaking these facts 100%. You need to keep talking and telling them. And then, some of our viewers here will share this podcast because this is very important. Our Getter family also they're saying the same thing. Numbers are factual. This is very important information you're bringing us, because then now it gives us some talking points to pull some of the facts that you have in numbers, and numbers, like you said, don't lie, and they're nonpartisan, and the numbers are numbers. You can't, fib them. So the thing for me is, now I've heard Jason Jones say this before. We've asked, so many people ask, why hasn't the government done anything about this? And Jason Jones pointed something out very important. He says the Uniform Crime Report, the way that they track stats, has not been updated since, I don't know, 1970s. So they really haven't been tracking the actual numbers of all these things. There's a lot of things that are getting off that list. So when you try to take it to the elected officials, and you say there's a crisis at the border, people are getting raped, well, they're not really tracking that because it's not in the Uniform Crime Report. So he says that would, number one, we've got to work on that in updating the Uniform Crime Report, because it's like they're not keeping up with the numbers. So how do you get an effect? How do you, effectively change anything when you don't have those numbers from the government who's tracking them? Now you're saying you have these numbers. How come they don't have access to these numbers, Todd?
Well, because listen, the numbers that I'm citing are public numbers that they post on their website, CBP and ICE. There is some numbers that they put. These are Border Patrol apprehensions that they post. The other numbers that I've cited to you, the 2.5 million, those are secret numbers. The reason I know those secret numbers is because there was a lawsuit against the Biden administration in Texas, and the judge required DHS to submit monthly status reports on the number of gotaways and on the number of admittances paroled in from inauguration day through June. It just stopped because the lawsuit got resolved. So now DHS doesn't have to supply those numbers, but that chunk of numbers that we got was precious, utterly precious, because now we got to see the number of gotaways. We learned that 1 million people got away since January 20th. Between January 20th and I guess July, you can, and we know what the rate is, so you can project out reasonably that we'll probably have another 1 million. Those are undercounts, by the way.
Absolutely.
There's a whole science behind gotaways, but it's in a court record, and so most of what you're talking about and Jason's talking about are secret. The DHS has the numbers, but they don't want you to know about it. And I'll give you a great example. The Biden administration, one of the most striking and unusual things that any president has ever done in the history of America is they ended deportation. They abolished ICE. They said they were going to, there were calls for them to abolish ICE, but then they said we wouldn't do that. But they did. They did it in a different way. They're getting paid, but they're not working. They're chained to their desks. So there was an annual report of deportations that every year for 15 years, every administration, Obama, Trump, everybody always did this report, Bush, this annual report that tells you how many criminal aliens were deported, how many a whole pie chart of
Right.
different kind of statistics. And um, with that, everybody was waiting for the Biden administration to release it. And it didn't come, and it didn't come, and it didn't come, and it didn't come. And finally, people were like, you're sandbagging on this information because you're not deporting criminals anymore. And that sheet is going to show it.
Right.
And sure enough, some ICE people who were furious
Mhm.
leaked the data out to the Washington Times. And the Washington Times put this out there, and it's exactly what you would expect. The number of deportations, I'm talking about hardcore criminals.
Criminals. Yeah.
I'm talking about murderers.
Right.
I'm talking about rapists and child molesters.
Right.
Not a few of them, but thousands of them
Right.
are being purposefully left in place inside the United States when they are perfectly deportable. And for the life of me, I will never understand. I mean, you can make an argument about, like, somebody who's been here for 20 years and they've
Right.
worked and abided by the rules, and they've got kids and all the rest, and we don't want to mess up their lives. Okay, I disagree with that, by the way, but that's a plausible side. Like, there's
Mhm.
something, but not criminals.
Not criminal. Yeah.
And I'll never, for the life of me, never ever understand why they would do that. The number of criminal aliens that they have allowed to stay here was down by 50%, 70%. I'm sorry, 70% of what it's always been. They deported last year about 39,000 criminal aliens. That may sound like a lot. Good, 40,000 are out. But
Mhm.
the year before, they deported like 230,000.
Right.
Just to give you an idea of the scale of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are no longer arresting criminals coming out of prisons, criminal aliens that are deportable immediately. You go to
Right.
the prison, they're getting out. They're never going to see 1 minute of freedom. The administration intervened in that and ended it, and made it so that prisons are not allowed, the federal ones are not allowed to tell ICE when criminal aliens are getting out. And I'm talking about murderers.
Right.
I'm talking about
The
child molesters.
hardcore, yeah, no, the hardcore criminals. It's not just like the guy who was smoking a joint. It's the hardcore criminals. So Todd, I mean, Gloria, how are you? Good night. Or not good night, but good to see you on Friday night. She says, you're so right. And she is super interested in reading your book. And so that's awesome. We're going to let you know, obviously, toddbensman.com. Gloria, you can go and order his book, I'm sure, through his website. So
Yes,
Todd,
you
I
can
mean,
pre-order it.
oh, and you can pre-order it. Yeah, but you've got your other book too that's been out. So
America's Covert Border War, which is about the terrorists coming across.
yeah. So, I mean, this is good information. So Todd, I mean, many people will ask, well, what can we do? What can we do? Like, we know that all this is, well, a few of us know that what's going on, right? And we're trying to get the message out, and we're trying to say, this is happening. And the numbers are, like you said, don't lie. So, but people are going to ask, Bianca, what do we do? What do we do? I
Well,
mean,
I get asked this all the time, and it's probably the most commonly asked question of me.
mhm.
The last couple of public speeches I've given about this, people got mad at my answer. So I'm going to just warn you a little bit ahead of time.
I-
But I mean, I'm just spitting truth here from
you,
my point of view.
that's what I want. I want, listen, I've said what I would, I mean, I'm a little drastic. I'd be like, declare the invasion and shut the border down. I mean, that's my answer. But what is your answer? Because I mean, we need to give different, I mean, people want to know, what can they do? So Todd,
My,
what can they
my,
do?
my answer is that when Republicans take the White House, or even Democrats who are normal,
Mhm.
like normal Democrats,
Are there normal Democrats?
there are normal. They're like Obama. Just a couple of months ago was quoted saying, "This thing going on at the border is unsustainable. This is crazy. We are a sovereign nation." That's Barack Obama. the people that are in charge right now are extremists. They are something a completely different animal than any Democrat you've ever seen. I have an entire chapter dedicated to those people. That it's called the New Theologians, is what I call them. They're
Wow.
this religious cult about immigration, and regular Democrats have always relegated them to the basement. They don't take any of, have never taken their ideas until this last election cycle. And then they are in charge. The inmates took over the insane asylum, so to speak. But until, but power over this resides at the federal level. Sorry. Everybody gets mad at me for saying that. We don't want to hear that. But it just does. It just does. They have DHS, they have the Border Patrol, and they control those bridges. The blue uniform guys control those bridges. They control the detention centers. They control the asylum system and the asylum policy. They control so many levers are in and around this that if you want to stop this, you have to have the White House, period. Now, are there things that can be done to impact it, to impact the like drug trafficking, and there are things that can be done, and I think Texas is doing some of these things. They're trying some of these things. Everybody's all excited about the busing and everything, and I'm not interested in the busing because it doesn't really do anything except.
I didn't feel that it solves anything. I mean, like you said, it might be shedding light, but Terry Lake said it. Yeah.
It makes the problem visible to people who would not normally see it, and there's a power in that. But
it's not now that you just bust them further into our country, which they were already getting into our country anyway, but you're assisting them with our tax dollars. Carrie Lake has been very outspoken about that. The candidate for governor in Arizona saying, I'm not going to do that. And so, but at a local level, with people at a local level, I mean, I know you're saying it's a government thing, but what can we do at a local level? An average mom or an average, single mom, an average just man out there that says, I don't know what to do when you're frustrated. We don't have the White House. I mean, and here's the other thing. There's those people that'll say, well, we had the White House. We had the White House, the House, and the Senate all when Trump got into office, and they didn't do anything. This has been an ongoing problem. This border stuff has been an ongoing problem. So, but what can we do locally? What can we possibly do? Do we go speak out somewhere? Do we write a letter? Do we just give up our hands? I mean, what can we tangibly do that we can feel like we've done something?
Not much, I'm afraid. But there is one thing that I think is always useful. It's you mentioned it a minute ago. We had the White House. Trump was in office, and then in both chambers were in Republican hands for 2 years, and they just couldn't quite do the permanent fixes that needed to be done. But Trump did do a lot. When and if the Republicans gain one or both chambers in the elections coming up, then this time the congressmen and women who are elected cannot be allowed to take a pass on it this time. They have to take initiative to end a few things, to change a few things, to demand a few things. There's just 2 or 3 things that have to change federally to fix this. It's not that complicated. The laws that are in place are good laws. They're just not followed. I've
heard that.
Everything's there. I've read them. I studied them. I'm telling you, they're great laws.
They're just not being enforced, right?
They don't. Right. It's that the White House uses something called prosecutorial discretion and they cite resource shortages and things like that to get around enforcement. That can't be allowed to happen. And if there is control over the budgets, the appropriations process, then those will have to be exercised, and I mean exercised, with no relent. If federal government employees have to go unpaid for 5 years, too bad. That
Mhm.
kind of thing. Okay. There is one thing that,
Okay.
and so you have to keep pressure on your congressman. You have to vote the right way.
Okay.
That this has to be a top issue. It can't be, if you really care about this, you can't let them worry about inflation instead. Sorry, you have to put this at the top, or it's going to get blown off.
Right.
Your congressmen and women and your senators. And by the way, where is John Cornyn on this thing? I where is
Oh,
John?
he's horrible. He's horrible. But you've made a good point, because what I've been actually something that I advocated even during Trump's, I just became politically active when Trump got into office. I mean, I had kind of dabbled a little bit into politics, but not really. I was a stay-at-home mom minding my own business, Todd. And then all of a sudden, here I am. It's just crazy with what
It's a
I
great
feel.
story.
I feel like God has just moved me. But one of the things that I was very passionate about is that because I'm a graduate, have a bachelor's, and I studied in my for a master's, and I studied public justice is what they called it. It was kind of criminal justice and public justice, and I was my goal was to go to law school. That's kind of what I wanted to do. So I'm versed in the political arena, studied political science. So I'm wasn't like, oh, I don't know anything about politics. And one of the things that I've learned, through college, and through even just when I did work, is that there is power in going and knocking on the door of your congressman and your senator and saying, what are you doing?
What you're doing is commanding a constituent army.
Yes.
And when you go knocking on Chip Roy's door or somebody's door, they're going to take you in and listen to you. And,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, people like you have got to keep their feet to the fire. When they get the House, they may not get the Senate. I don't know what's going to happen with the Senate, but if they do, it'll be by 1 or 2. It's not going to be,
It's
it's
not
going
gonna
to
be
be,
I
um,
agree. I agree. But
there need to be hearings.
yeah.
There needs to be regular hearings
Okay.
about the border, so that information becomes public.
Okay.
People who are down there, experts who are down there, bring in Border Patrol, bring in people like me, bring in Jason, all of that, so that and relentless until the 2024 election, and that is where the rubber's going to meet the road. Now, there is one thing I want to say
Okay.
about Texas, and really any state. The one move that I was really impressed by from Governor Abbott that got like no attention at all was that he had the Texas Department of Public Safety conduct safety inspections at the bottom of the bridges for about a week. He shut down the Laredo International bridges with 3 guys doing safety inspections on trucks. He
I
shut
think I
down
remember seeing that
He
somewhere.
shut down 5 bridges that are responsible for a massive portion of American trade. Okay, this is hugely important because what it produced. First of all, there was some pain on our side, but he didn't care. It was a ton of pain on the Mexican side. They can afford it less than we can afford it, and within 3 or 4 days, he had the governors of those states at the negotiating table in Austin agreeing to all these security operations on their side. It's not the central Mexican government. It was the state of Coahuila, the state of Tamaulipas, and they have state police. Now, all of those state police are corrupted. We know that, and so are the damn governors. However corrupted they are, they're not so corrupted that their lives won't be ruined in perpetuity when bridge trade stops. And I thought that that was an incredibly interesting experiment that Abbott conducted. He pulled his troopers off of the bridges after all four governors that connect to Texas signed these security agreements. And in a couple of cases, I was able to determine that they were doing operations on their side. They were doing things. They were hauling migrants off buses, driving them back to Monterey. They were requiring in Saltillo that the bus companies not sell tickets to anybody who doesn't have papers, and so or there would be repercussions. And so they slowed it down, they chopped it up, they did some stuff. The extent of it, I don't know, because nobody reported on this operation at all. It was just me trying to. I was reading Mexican news accounts about
Interesting.
what happened, and I feel like that has more promise than anything that I've ever heard. If the governor of Arizona shut down Douglas, the international bridge at
Yeah, the
Nogales,
port of entry. Yeah.
the ports of entry with safety inspections, which are fully in their right, legal and jurisdictional right, it could have a tremendous impact. And if they stuck to it, not a week,
Right.
but how about 5 months?
Yes.
You and the
Yes.
and
You know,
that
oh,
if
it's
you
an
held it
election
back for,
time.
I'm sorry, if you held it back for 3 months straight, you would have the Biden White House sending troops down here. You would have the Mexican palace like at the table, because that's oil imports, that's parts for weapons, that's car parts. The entire auto industry in the United States relies on all those parts manufacturing plants. And a governor could do that with 3 troopers at the Laredo Bridge. And I don't know why he hasn't done it more, but he hasn't done it more. But that's a thing. I'm just going
Did
to.
and there was and that's actually a good point. I recall reading that headline that, that there was a closure and there was a backlog of people couldn't come in and they were complaining. And I remember hearing something about that. Yeah, he's about the governors, but it didn't stop the illegals from coming in anyway.
No, but
However,
he didn't.
you're
He pulled them off.
yeah, and maybe Todd, you're actually right. I could see that had he been more consistent with that and done like random inspections, and became a thing, right? Where you just close it down. It maybe if he had done that, you would have maybe right now be seen as a different situation, but he hadn't done that again. And I know that there's sheriffs and there's people in Texas have been asking him to declare an invasion, to give him more power to do something else, and he's not done that. But that's a good point. So for listeners out there, maybe that needs to be something you call the governor's office about and say, hey, why haven't you done an inspection? Or, hey, we suspect that this bridge it's going to collapse. I mean, we could do something to energize a base to say we're concerned. And we think there needs to be more inspections. That's one avenue. Second, I completely, totally agree with us as regular patriots, activists. I think that is something that's been at my heart, that I'm saying, hey, we're going to have to not become a lobbyist group, but we're going to have to. I feel like my job in my organization is going to be gathering people and saying, hey, we're going to go down 10 of us every month or something, or a group of us. We're going to go knock on the legislators' doors, and we're going to be there, as minorities, saying, what are you doing? Where are you at? We want, we demand that there's something. You better be putting this border crisis, invasion, whatever you want to call it. This better be at the top of your list. And I think that if we start showing up, sometimes I'm not really sure that the phone call and the emails work, because that's just electronic. I mean, it might send a message, but I think when you show up in person, it's a whole different ballpark. Like they're like, oh my God, that means that we took the time to travel there, spent money to go knock on their door to say, hey, we're advocating for these policies here. This is top priority. We're representing this many people. We're representing this community, this county, whatever it is. And that, I think, is where the power is for us people. We've become complacent in the past years. We don't show up. We haven't been showing up. We may call every so often or write an email or say, hey, I agree with this or don't agree with that. But we need to be more consistent. There is a way, and a way when you go and approach a legislator is not by yelling at them, by throwing things at them, but if you go in there and effectively say something in a professional manner, they take you very serious. Now, I'm an
Yeah,
activist, so I speak out a lot. But when I go and I'm in front of them, Todd, it's a whole different story. You have to mind your manners, right? In order to get real change and for them to take you serious.
I always thought that it was a clever idea what the NRA used to do. They would grade candidates on their
Mm.
gun protection, their Second Amendment dedication, right? And if you got a bad grade from the NRA, you were going to lose a whole bunch of votes. And maybe there should be a grading system that gets published from your group or a coalition of groups about their position on illegal immigration at the border. What did they do? That whether you've got somebody grading them on their promises versus their action, and if they get a zero, the next time they're up for election, man, they're going to lose your group. I always thought that was clever that they did that, and it was very effective.
Yeah, that's actually a very good idea for our PAC, the Latinos for America First PAC, is to come up with that grading system. And we could do it from the org as well. Our org is more known for just education and policy, right? So our PAC is actually where we do get involved more with the political candidates. But I think that those are excellent ideas for our group. And I think that you've given us some great information tonight, great stats, great facts that we can use. We can put it out in our newsletter and let people know. I'm going to have our media team kind of take 30-second, 45-second bits of our interview here when you're spitting out those facts, and we're going to push them through our social media. We have found that doing those little stories and reels have been very effective. The little TikToks. I went viral on TikTok already several times with just those little, hit pieces. I didn't realize how many Latinos were on TikTok. I have a whole bunch of them, and I cut down the analytics, and I found that San Antonio, Rio Grande Valley, El Paso, not Chicago, LA, and some in Arizona, and then Florida. It was very interesting where these people are living that are following our TikTok account. So I said, I'm hitting a nerve. My messaging is on. I know how to message to my communities. I know I grew up in those communities. I grew up in the barrio, so I know how to direct that message. And this is going to be very helpful for us moving forward, Todd. I mean, we really thank you for coming on and educating us and educating our viewers. And so this is great.
Absolutely, anytime. And I was just telling. I might have been on Bannon's show, one of those. I was telling some interviewer recently that the precincts along the border that used to be blue, those blue precincts, which started to turn red, they started to go red-ish in 2016, and then a bunch of them actually flipped. As you know, I don't need to. Whoever's listening to this thing knows all about this, but
right.
But the issue there is that the rest of Texas is going purple, and the polling is showing Beto O'Rourke. Now, polling is polling. I know nobody believes it, but it's all you got.
Hmm.
really, to be able to kind of get a sense of where things are and what the trends are, is showing that Beto O'Rourke is really gaining ground on this abortion issue, and was like 4 to 6 points behind Abbott. And I can tell you that if that happens, if there's a Governor O'Rourke, if there's an upset, don't think that this is locked down. This is not locked down. Things are up in the air, especially with the Supreme Court ruling. The other side is very energized in a way that I don't think people understand how
Hmm.
energized they are. The Latino, Mexican American voting precincts down there might be the only thing standing between a Governor Beto O'Rourke and a Governor Abbott. And if you have, I'm writing about this right now. I'm going to have a piece out here fairly soon. Um, and I've been studying Beto O'Rourke's immigration and border policy platforms. And
Oh
it is
Lord.
nothing that none of you people are going to be able to live with it. I'm telling you. The first thing that he's going to do is he's going to pull the DPS out of there. He's going to pull the National Guard out of there, and he's going to leave it undefended, completely undefended, for the drug traffickers and the child traffickers and everything else. I know that there's a lot of people, and I'm biased. I worked for DPS for a decade, so I'm a little bit biased,
Hmm.
and their intelligence division. But having disclosed that, the Operation Lone Star in huge swaths down there is all that stands between the worst pieces of garbage in the world and your children. That's it. Because Border Patrol's off the line. They are processing family units into the country all shift long, shift after shift. They're not on the line. So in a lot of those areas, all you have is Texas DPS and their cars, and they're chasing, and there's all these chases.
Right.
There wouldn't be any of those chases if DPS wasn't down there. Beto O'Rourke will pull them all off, and do whatever he can, probably spend state funding to aid and assist everybody that's illegally crossing the border. He'll tear down all the fencing that Abbott put up. He'll tear down maybe even the El Paso fencing. Whatever he can get rid of, he'll definitely tear down whatever he can that Greg Abbott put up. So the precincts down there, I think, are more important to Texas and to the country than any other precinct in the country, because where Texas goes the nation. We have
Hmm. Right.
1,254 miles of border,
Hmm.
and it's that constituency down there. They've got to go red. They
Yeah, I
have.
agree. That was my passion back in 2016 when Trump got elected, and I was hired by the Republican Party of Texas as a Hispanic engagement director. And my work was down south of San Antonio, and I was told by the Republican Party, "We don't go down there. It's blue. We don't do anything. We don't spend money down there." And I said, "Well, who am I supposed to talk to? Who do I talk to?" So people know me obviously on my podcast. I don't follow instructions very well. And I went down there anyway, Todd, and I started to have conversations, and my conversations were with faith leaders first. And I worked my way from the faith leaders out, and started to train and mentor many people down there within our organization. Well, because we were still in a Latino Trump movement as well while I was working at the party. So, but we had so many people that had come out for Trump, and that was I understood MAGA. I didn't understand Republican, but I understood MAGA, and so I knew how to communicate with these people, and it was very, very important. And I knew that if we planted seeds, if we just educated our people, they always felt like, oh my gosh, she's going to come tell us we're Republican. And I always came with the approach of, I'm not here to tell you that you're Republican. I'm not even telling you to vote Republican. I'm here to just educate you basically on, what each party platform stands for. And then you decide. I just want to make sure that my communities are educated and they understand the difference, and that you make a choice. Not that people think you're dumb enough that you can't make a choice for yourself. And that really empowered them. And I think that it's not just the Hispanic community that could go across the board with anybody, but it empowered them, Todd. And I believe that I planted these seeds. I kept going down there. I watered them, watered them, and they bloomed. And this is the aftermath. I said, with a community like this that has been blue for 100 years plus, and if you just give them attention, if you just give them education, the Bible tells us my people, perish because lack of knowledge. Well, if you don't give them the knowledge, then what do you expect? But if you just do that and you can watch them grow, this is the movement you're seeing. So it is very important to our Hispanic communities. We're very, very, conservative. We believe in our freedoms and our liberties, and we want to protect them. We understand what's going on in those communities. We're seeing the aftermath. It's obviously this impact of what's happening at the border is like you said earlier, it's affecting our school districts, it's affecting the health system, it's affecting pretty much everything. Homelessness, you're seeing a record number of homelessness going on in these communities. They're already probably one of the most, some of them are the most poor in the country, right? And now they have more homelessness. I mean, they cannot sustain. So they're clearly understand what we're up against at the border. And you are seeing a big, huge turnaround, and they're starting to say, well, we don't agree with this crazy, like you said, the inmates are running the asylum. They don't agree with those things. They don't agree with these policies. And that's why you are seeing that. My thing is that I think that the Republican Party does need to realize that, first of all, what you're talking about, Abbott and Beto, Abbott is very controlling. He doesn't want to have big events because he knows his base and the Republicans are upset at him. They're very upset because he hasn't done a lot of things that they feel that he should have done. But you've got Beto on the other side who's out there energizing. This is what they're good at, Todd. They're good at energizing their base. They're
And
good at showing up.
they have the ultimate issue right now too.
Yes, and they're using it to their advantage. I knew that back in 2018. I knew that when Beto was running against Senator Cruz, Beto wasn't in it. I mean, they knew as a party that they would love for Beto to win senator, but they knew that wasn't the end game. The end game was to get everybody down the ballot elected. That was his end game, and they accomplished that, and they did it very well. So now he's coming back and he's energizing this base, and you're right, he's energizing the base. If our party and our side doesn't start doing the same, then you're right. We are going to have some serious problems here in Texas.
It's going to be Ann Richards.
I used to like her. I thought she was tough.
She was, I mean, she wasn't I'm just saying that he's not Ann Richards.
No. Listen, I was raised a Democrat, Todd. Until what is it? McCain came along, McCain and then Romney. So McCain, when he came along, that's when my mother told all of us we're no longer voting Democrat. I mean, you're talking about a woman here. We're from South Texas. You're talking about a woman here who's voted Democrat all her entire life since she was 18.
What was the change for her? What was the issue that?
Todd, you're gonna laugh, but this is this was the Catholic family. She said Obama's the Antichrist. She believed Obama was the Antichrist. And she just figured that, she used to listen to O'Reilly a lot. Right. And so I think that she just was like, they don't represent us. And she's the one that she made us go vote Republican. All of us were like, okay, whatever. And we're just like, yeah. Okay, fine. We'll vote Republican. I didn't even pay attention to what I was voting for back then, Todd. And this is like not too long ago. So she made that pivot because she realized that already, I think, at that time, she saw that the Democrat Party was no longer the party that it used to be. She started to see a shift. She had to have. If it wasn't just that,
I see an increasing possibility of a Democratic upset in the governor's mansion. So
Well, we're in trouble, Todd. And like I said, look, this is why our elected officials, they need to step up their game. They can't sit there, I'm sorry, but Governor Abbott cannot sit there behind his mansion and say, well, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna do this little rally, but he only allows, 100 people in. You have to be out there shaking hands, doing the things that Beto's doing and going into communities that you may not go into. That's the whole basis of our organization. I'm like, people say, well, we didn't see you at this function. We didn't see you. I don't need to go to those functions. You guys are already Republican. I'm talking to people who are not, because I need to educate people so that they're educated and they can make an informed decision. I'm not trying to turn them into Republicans per se. I would want them to, but that's not my goal. My goal is to make sure that they have knowledge and understanding, and I connect the dots for them. Why do you think that you can't afford gas in your tank right now? Why do you think you have to carpool to work? Why do you think you can't afford the brisket you're used to buying? Why? Okay, I connect those dots because policies that are being made are affecting you.
well, while you're connecting those dots, you should download Beto O'Rourke's immigration policy and let him see it.
I'm going to
I
do
know,
that.
I know, or when I write my piece, when I finally write my piece, you can use that too. But I mean, he speaks for himself. I mean, we know
Absolutely.
what he's all about. He's trying to modulate it a little bit, but we know what his
What
campaign platform is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Todd, I mean, I'm telling you, thank you so much for the education, such tremendous knowledge from you. Our Getter family is certainly, very tuned in right now, and I think you've given us a lot
Good.
of great information that we can use. I hope this is not the last time we see you. I thank you so much for coming
Yeah,
on tonight on
anytime,
Saturday night. Um,
anytime. I love what you guys are doing,
Thank
and
you.
I'm on Getter too, by the way. If anybody wants to keep track of
Yeah,
my
let
work,
people know, Todd, where to find you on all your platforms. I know I've got your toddbensman.com right now, but where can people find you?
well, T Bensman at Getter.
Okay.
My website is toddbensman.com, and my employer is the Center for Immigration Studies, CIS.org. So so if you want to see a lot of my work, it'll be there. And although yesterday I was very proud that I had the page one cover of the New York Post. One of my
Ah,
stories was on the cover. It was so funny because it's a tabloid, and they're just so tabloidy, right? And I think
oh, of
the
course.
headline was Joe's Vile Deal. Joe's Vile Deal. This thing that he did with Haiti to clear the Del Rio
Oh,
camp.
I
He
saw that.
That was
I
my
didn't see
story.
that was your story.
That was my
I
story.
didn't. I just remember seeing the story that they were saying, did you know? Actually, it was passed around through my little channels and chats, and they were like, did you know that he used this Del Rio thing and he made an agreement with Haiti? And I was like, I was reading it and I was like, I didn't realize it was your story. But I was
That was
like,
my story. I excerpted it from my book, and just wrote
wow.
it as a private piece and gave it to the New York Post, and they put it on the damn cover.
Wow. Unbelievable. We thank you, Todd. We thank you for your work.
Thank you.
And listen, to have learned that you're not on the US side and you've been actually all the way going down into the
Oh
other
yeah.
countries to interview people. We just commend you for that. We thank you, because if it wasn't for people like you that go and get that knowledge and that, then we wouldn't know. You were gathering intel that we would not know. So you've definitely educated me with things I still did not know. And so we just thank you so much for all that you do. I encourage everybody to go read toddbensman.com. Go visit his website. You'll see his books. You'll see his definitely his bio, all that he's done, his intelligence career, journalism career. You've definitely written a lot, obviously been recognized by the National Press Club in 2008, 2009. So you are not just some guy that decided to speak out. You have been covering this type of, information and
For a
counterterrorism
long time.
intelligence. This is amazing. Your story is amazing. I am honored and privileged to have had you on. I love watching you on War Room as well, Bannon. And so I just thank you so much for your work. And again, I would love to have you on later as you can catch us, catch up our audience on whatever's going on. If you ever have something that you need to get out, Todd, send it over to me. We'd love to share it on our pages so that, we have tons of ways that we get information out all over the country.
I will do. I
channels.
have the best way is sign up for my newsletter. It's
Okay.
free. You can
Okay.
unsubscribe anytime. It's on my website, toddbensman.com. And if you do that, every time I write something new, I put it on a little newsletter thing and I ship it out to all those people to make sure that they can read it, that they know about it. That's really
This is this is amazing. And so I am actually, as we are speaking, I myself am signing up, Todd. I want to make sure that I get your newsletters, so that because you have some extremely important information. I get bits and pieces from people that send me stuff, have helped out the Border Patrol agents. Sometimes if they had, something, they'd say, we can't speak, but somebody can just get out because they need help. They need help getting this information out. So
Well,
I just signed up. I encourage everybody else to go sign up on
thank you.
toddbensman.com.
Yeah. And I've been so busy with the book, I haven't had a chance to go down to the border in several months. So now that it's done finally and in, I'll probably be going out to Tijuana and Mexicali and
Wow.
all in the Sonora, on the Sonora side. So you'll want to watch my reporting on there too.
Well, stay safe out there, Todd. That is not an easy job. Like I said, we know the dangers of being in those territories and cartel and
I'll be going with Oscar Blue. I'll take care of him.
Hey, what are you talking about? Oscar Blue got taken over and
I know.
I mean,
That's
that
because I wasn't there to protect him.
I'm telling you, I said, what in the world? He was actually on the phone with Anthony Aguero at the time when he got taken, and Anthony was flipping out. So, Oscar is such a good guy. So yeah, you both take care of each other. We wouldn't want anything to happen to you guys. But thank you again so much for coming on and being on Stand Up, Stand Out America tonight with Lo Conservadora Tejana. And Todd, maybe one of these mornings I am on 1440 Keys on AM and FM out in the Coastal Bend, South Texas area, with Bob Jones. I'll let you know when you can come on in the morning and educate my morning listeners. Every Monday morning I'm on. You can come and educate them as well. They love when I bring guests on the show, and let them know. I'm just trying to help other people get their message out so that they get educated, because Bianca Gracia does not know everything. So but I just do my diligent and my best to try to get information out as fast as I can. So thank you, Todd. Thank you so much. We just are so grateful you were on the show tonight. So guys, we have gone early. So Todd, what an honor you've spent. Late. I'm sorry, we went really late. So thank you so much for spending so much time with us and sharing your Friday night with us. So we thank you guys. Thank you so much, Todd. Until next time at Stand Up, Stand Out America with Bianca Gracia, La Conservadora Tejana. Good night, everybody, and have a great weekend.